us. The only difference is that I feel like I'm on the verge of death. So really, I'm just trying to make up some life at this moment.
Why are you almost dead?
Well, I was alone for Christmas, which isn't me trying to get sympathy, because I actually enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it just a little too much. And the problem was that it's hard to cook things for one person, you know? There's no recipe for one person. There aren't many ribeye steaks that are really just for one person, especially when you go like appetizer, baked potato.
Right.
And so I had this I had 3 meals planned, and I finish the steak and baked potato portion, and I'm like, wow, I'm really full. It's like 5 p.m. And but I had planned to make this whole apple crisp. I had a pint of vanilla ice cream, and I was saving that for the Lakers-Clippers game. I was like, well, I can't bail out now.
Can't not.
So I make it, I eat half of it, and I'm sitting there at like 10 o'clock. I'm legitimately hunched over a chair, praying that like my stomach will start to feel normal so I can sleep. It's not happening.
I was going to ask if you went to Mass yesterday.
Yeah, I was praying at this moment.
At the end of the day, you were at Mass.
I was praying to baby Jesus, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh my God. I still needed to write a little bit of our article. I'm sitting there like standing up, writing, kind of like a zombie, deep breaths. I could not fall asleep. I'm sweating. I have air conditioning turned on as low as it could possibly go. I wake up this morning. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm gonna die.
I think our listeners and viewers are pretty happy to know that like you've experienced something that we've no doubt all experienced. Given your like for example, the one time I had to discuss with you that there's a significant part of this country that eats McDonald's as like a treat, and you think it's like the biggest travesty of all time.
I can't believe that.
And so at least now we know that you go through that. At least you eat too much sometimes.
I ate way too much, to the point where when I was working out this morning, I thought I was going to pass out. I smelled like meat, basically. It was bad. So if I die in the middle of this podcast, you'll know why. How was your Christmas? You made it back, thankfully.
It was great. I got to host a radio show prior to the Vikings game with former Vikings quarterback Sage Rosenfels,
who, interestingly, if he had played quarterback for the Vikings,
probably would have done better. Yeah,
might have had a chance.
Well, I had to explain to Sage that like when he got traded to the Vikings where their starter was Tavares Jackson, who I could not stand, and so I think I named my fantasy team one year Age of Sage. And then the Vikings went and signed Favre, and of course, like my team name is now rendered moot, right?
Yeah.
And so I told him I was momentarily disappointed that they signed Favre in lieu of him, and he had a chuckle at that, given how good Favre played that year.
The Vikings quarterbacks are such a funny group.
Dude, it's unbelievable.
It's really a motley crew. That game, that we have not spoken since that game on a podcast.
It was the last leg of our lock of the week.
It was. We didn't need to tease it.
Well, we did need to tease Buffalo though. That was a good thing. So there was like an actually like the perfect teaser is when neither leg covers the actual spread but covers the teaser. We had at least one that didn't cover the spread but covered the teaser. So
Green Bay ended up winning outright, obviously convincingly. And when we talked on the Monday prior, we really liked the Packers as more than 3-point underdogs. Obviously got it to 4.5, 5. So you would have been golden there. Golden if you'd taken the money line. Someone just asked you before we came in here when you knew that the Vikings had no shot. For me personally, so the turnover happens and you go, oh, wow, maybe this is one of those games for Rodgers. And you go, well, actually, hold on. Pump the brakes here. I got to see Kirk Cousins throw a pass first.
Yeah.
So he gets out there. He's on the 10-yard line. And I think this was the second pass he threw, but it was like an out on the left side. Was it to a running back? Might have been
C.J. Ham. It was like a flare to C.J. Ham.
And he overthrows him by 8 feet.
Yeah.
Like you could have stacked LeBron on Anthony Davis, and well, Patrick Beverly would have ended up blocking the shot, but like they still wouldn't have had a chance. And that's when I knew, actually, this game isn't even close to over.
It's crazy because I was in Western Wisconsin with my family. Hello, family. They were upset I didn't shout them out on the radio.
Did they really? But definitely listening now.
But and my uncle is a diehard Packers fan, and like the entire first half, he's just beside himself over how they like just missed opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. Devontae Adams drops a touchdown, so they go into halftime behind. Rodgers throws a pick finally to Anthony Harris. Like Rodgers completed 2 of 10 passes beyond 10 yards. He was horrible that night.
He wasn't good at all.
And just the Vikings just showed their limitations because again, they run 2 receivers or less more than any team in the league. One of those receivers runs slower than I do right now, and Adam Thielen. They couldn't run the ball with Boone, and they tried. That was their biggest problem, was they tried to run the football with can't remember his first name, Boone. Mike Boone. And it just wasn't successful. In Green Bay, to their credit, like made Garrett Bradbury look like early season Garrett Bradbury. I mean, he gave up 3 sacks, most sacks I think a center's given up in a few years. So
it wasn't great. Was not great.
Rodgers was, but just to underscore this, Rodgers was terrible again. I mean, the only thing they got offensively throwing the football were these old dinking dunk plays to Devontae Adams, who was making plays after the catch. And I know, like, not everything was his fault with the fumbles and everything, but, you know, if you're Green Bay, you come out of that game, you think, okay, our defense can beat Kirk Cousins when he you know, turns into a pumpkin. But they're not satisfied with their offense, are they?
No, they can't be. And the crazy thing about Green Bay is that they have a legit shot at home field.
I know, unreal.
Which is unbelievable to think. I mean, at 87 pass rating, 5.8 yards per attempt from a clean pocket for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has been repeatedly below average from a clean pocket, which I can't stress how ridiculous that is to be considering him a top 3, top 5 quarterback when he's below average from a situation where the average quarterback rating is over 100. So you're not scared of their offense. I don't think unless you have Kirk Cousins as a quarterback, you're that scared of their defense, and yet they could be the number 1 team in the NFC, which underscores, I really think, what this playoffs is all about, which is it's wide open.
Yes.
Right now, the odds-on favorite, according to sportsbooks, to win the Super Bowl are the Baltimore Ravens, plus 200, which is ridiculous to me, and I don't even think I would take them right now to come out of the AFC.
I mean, well, they're minus 130 to come out of the AFC, which is again, like you're looking at, you're looking at a substantial. There are substantial favorites to win both of those games as a result of that, of that price, and you're just, I mean. And we love the Ravens, right? They do a lot of things very smartly. They did a great job of re-engineering their defense mid-season to get a competent group there, a very good group, frankly, there. Lamar Jackson's the MVP of the league in all likelihood, all that kind of stuff. And yet I think if I were to take I would take the field over the Ravens any day of the week at this point, just given what you're laying in terms of a price.
I'm right there with you. The team that out of the AFC that intrigues me the most are your Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that they have no run game and that I don't like their defense, despite the fact that their defense has done well lately. That's all a function of the fact that they've played terrible offenses. But when you see Pat Mahomes in the snow eviscerating people from inside and outside the pocket, that's the thing that travels. And by the way, the Super Bowl's in Miami. It's not in the North Pole. So people can get over this whole, well, you got to run the football malarkey because it's just totally crap.
Mahomes had less than 5% of his throws negatively graded in the snow game against Denver, who's a good defense with a great secondary in many cases. So, yeah, I mean, the idea that Baltimore basically being lined right now as a 75%, 25% favorite against both of their teams. And again, I get it at home, but like if they're facing Kansas City at home, they are not set. They are not minus 300.
No chance.
If they're hosting New England, I still think they're not minus 300. If they're facing Houston again, especially if Will Fuller plays, they're not minus 300. Tennessee could also give them problems should they get that far. And so I get that the Ravens are the strongest team. They're hot, and there's not a ton of things you can say badly about them other than I think people are just over their skis a little bit with respect to them. Here's a question, though. You talk about the NFC. You talk about conference futures. Right now, San Francisco is considered the favorite to win the NFC, at least at a bet online here, at plus 175. New Orleans second at plus 200. Green Bay plus 350, and then after that, it's a bunch of crap. In fact, Seattle's plus 700, which I got to look and see. That's not a great value. But are we a little bit overrating San Francisco given that they have basically a 57-43 chance just to even get a bye / a home game? Should they be favorites?
No.
Yeah, because like mathematically speaking, I just don't think that makes sense.
It does not, and there's a little bit of nostalgia built into this, in my opinion, which is the Niners are such a storied franchise. It's Christmas. Those Reds, people are looking at them and getting excited, but the 49ers are not as strong a team as the New Orleans Saints. And despite the fact that they beat the Saints, we need to stop worrying about a one-game sample size as the determining factor in which team is better.
Right.
That's just ludicrous today. And I think you brought this point up yesterday, and I think it sums it up perfectly. So one of the things that we do is, instead of looking at the final score of the game, we say, well, how did these teams grade out? And if the score were to go according to how they played, in other words, how they graded, what would the score be? And in that New Orleans-San Francisco game, New Orleans actually would have won that game by a couple of points, given how well they played. Which isn't to say that they just the score lies to you or whatever. It's just to say that there are things that they did that they didn't actually get credit for on the scoreboard that you should be paying attention to. And that sums up the Saints overall this season, which is there are things that they've done that have not shown up in their record or in the games that they've played that you should be paying attention to. And they are the team out of the NFC that you should be most worried about and most likely to come out of the NFC without a doubt. Without a doubt. They have the better quarterback than the Niners. They have the better chance at getting a bye in the first round. And those two things really, really matter.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think people think Seattle is dead. And I don't think we're going to end up picking them this week against the spread. But the fact of the matter is they're being undervalued right now. And not to say that they're going to win, but there's a significant number of universes where San Francisco doesn't even get a chance to play a home game in the playoffs. And so should they be the favorite to win the NFC? Absolutely not. At least with New Orleans, you're going to get, like, the worst case scenario for the New Orleans Saints is to get the 3 seed and to play Minnesota in the first round, a team that, I cannot see going into New Orleans and winning. And then they basically go to Green Bay or San Francisco after that. And again, if they go to Green Bay, I think that game should be at worst to pick them if New Orleans is in Green Bay. And so they win that game, and then they go to San Francisco. And again, we talked about this last week with the Saints. They go on the road to San Francisco. It's going to be good weather. Breeze is going to be fine outside in that situation. And we're starting to see some things that have to materialize for the Saints materialize. Jared Cook is the most efficient tight end in the NFL over the last month and a half. Alvin Kamara came out of his slump last week and had some explosive plays. Their offensive line is terrific. Their defense, is banged up a little bit, but they've gotten reinforcements in that secondary in DJ Swearinger and Janoris Jenkins. That's a team. To me, all these prices are inflated, but New Orleans is the one that offers value. I think if you're looking at them plus 200 to win the NFC or I believe plus 500 to win the Super Bowl, everything else is sort of tough. I mean, maybe New England at plus 500, but I can't buy into that.
What about Dallas? They're not. The Dallas Cowboys are not dead yet.
Yeah, the problem is it's still not enough.
I know it's not a plus EV play, but the point I wanted to bring up was that everyone rejoiced in Philadelphia after that win last week, and one of the reasons that Dallas had value early on, or not early on, but a few weeks ago, was because they could have lost this game. And as we can see, the Eagles are 4.5, 5-point favorites in New York without Zach Ertz potentially. That should be terrifying.
Well, and the New York Giants do a thing that can really hurt Philadelphia, which is score points, because Philadelphia can't score points on a consistent basis. And I know the Giants prevent a lot of points, the Giants give up a lot of points, but it's not the last time they played, Eli Manning was playing, and they had them on the ropes, 14 points down on the road. I do think that Doug Peterson will have this team ready to play, unlike Jason Garrett with respect to the Cowboys last week. But it's not a sure thing. And the betting markets, this moved out. Actually, I saw it earlier. Philadelphia to win the NFC East was something like minus 210, and now it's minus 300. So people are certainly saying, okay, we at least think Philadelphia's going to win this week. I would slow the Jets there.
Let's do a little power ranking resetting of the two sides of the bracket. So I think this would be interesting. Top 3 teams, both sides of the bracket. Just, forget about what our ELO ratings say.
Yeah.
Take all things into account, and let's just go 1 through 3 on each side. So I'll go first with the NFC. On the NFC side of things, it goes for me Saints, Niners, Seahawks.
And you're taking Seattle because their quarterback is better than Green Bay, substantially. Minnesota's a mess.
Yep.
As is the NFC East. Okay, I don't hate it. I do think Seattle will, if healthy, will be dangerous in the playoffs. Right now they're a little bit banged up. Okay, I can't argue with that. I'm not putting Green Bay top 3. I just can't.
I'm not. There's no
Rodgers.
chance of putting Green Bay in the top 3, and Seattle has. Look, Lamar Jackson's going to win the MVP. He's been the most exciting player in the NFL. But Russell Wilson has been the most valuable player to his team, and it is not particularly close. And if they can in the past couple of weeks, Seattle's supporting cast has not been average as they've been for the majority of the season. They've been deplorable.
Yeah.
And he just hasn't been able to raise them from the dead, a la Jesus. But if they just get back to average, he can do that for a couple of games. So that's why they're 3 in my mind. Did you mention your NFC guys or no?
No, my NFC is the same as yours. My AFC is Baltimore, Kansas City, 50 feet of crap, and then New England. I wanted to go with Houston, but Houston's performance last week against Tampa Bay is the same old Houston, where they play like gangbusters against some teams. Like they go on the road and beat Tennessee in a game they needed to have, and should have won by more. Then they go and against Tampa Bay, and all the money goes on them, right? And if you had the -2, congratulations. But if you had the -3, you didn't get to the window, and you should have just lost the game outright. They play, Watson just is not the same player without Will Fuller. That scares me a little bit. But it's just like they're just up and down. They're just too up and down. And so I still have to go with New England. I think beating Buffalo is actually more impressive than more people are going to give them credit for. But there's a significant gap between them and Kansas City in my mind.
All right, so the Ravens have a better chance to make the Super Bowl because they have home field. But just taking the teams right now, just say they're playing on a neutral field. People are going to hate me for this, but I would take the Chiefs. Then the Ravens right behind them. And then I actually don't think 50 feet of crap because of the way that we know New England can strategize. But I would put New England solidly in 3rd. And Houston, the issue with Houston is that they are too volatile.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel as comfortable about knowing where they're going to stand. I feel the most comfortable, as crazy as this is, with the way the Ravens have played, I feel the most comfortable about what Pat Mahomes will deliver on the field than any other player in the NFL right now.
My concern with Kansas City in the playoffs.
They can't run the ball.
No, my concern with Kansas City in the playoffs is their inability. Like I think that their ability to stop the run has been significantly exaggerated because it doesn't matter that much.
Agreed.
And so, I'm a little bit worried there, given how that's like the one, like the Ravens' run offense is the one in the NFL that I care about and worry about. But at the same time, the thing that the Kansas City Chiefs have as an arrow in their quiver is that they can score a lot. So
matters. The Super Bowl's played in Miami. I don't know if I've told you that yet.
Yeah, but the AFC Championship game is going to be played in Baltimore, probably, in all likelihood.
This is very true. I mean, maybe it's snowing, and that really helps. We saw, one game sample of Mahomes in the snow, and he was very good.
What we could see, though, is who would be the 4 seed. Houston knock off Baltimore, Kansas City knock off New England, and then have a home game.
Could happen. I mean, if Will Fuller comes back, we'll talk about this with Houston, but I'll bring this up right now. With Will Fuller, I'm on the verge of death here. Will Fuller has been on the field for about half of the pass plays for Houston this season. Yeah. When he's on the field, they average 7.3 yards per pass play. When he's off the field, 6.1. It is a dramatic difference. They have about twice as many gains of 20-plus yards when he's on the field compared to when he's off the field. And you can see it when you watch them play, right? It's just so dramatically different when Will Fuller is on there, their ability to get big plays. So if he's on the field, there's no reason to think they can't be one of the most dangerous teams because Deshaun Watson will make plays, the high value plays that can, if you string them together, can beat anybody. So I think you've got to consider it. Do you want to move right now to Niners Seahawks, or do you want to talk a little bit more about some playoff matchups? Because we had that slated for like what are some of the cooler playoff matchups and what are the chances of them happening?
Yeah, well, let's just talk about the ones like we'd like to see,
Okay.
and like how likely, yeah. So first round matchups. What's one that you would be intrigued to see?
Well, it all really depends on this Seattle San Francisco game, because I would love to see Seattle going to Dallas, and I'd also love to see the Niners going to Dallas. But any combination of those, the Seattle-Dallas game from last year was so funny. People talked about it for so long because Seattle just took the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands and ended up losing to a Dallas team.
Such a horrible game
That we now know is really not that good. So that would be one I would really like to see. I think there's one in the wild card, though, on the AFC side that is also worth talking about, and that would be Buffalo-Houston.
Yeah, that's one that I wrote about in the article that we're publishing soon. I think that's a great matchup in the sense that the secondary for Buffalo probably is good enough to match up with the receivers of Houston, and that's really what that they have going for them. And then the question then becomes, okay, can they eventually get enough pressure on Watson to make him struggle? Because that's really how we saw Tampa Bay, to their credit, they covered well enough for that pressure to get home and for Watson to look pretty ordinary last Saturday. And then, how does Josh Allen do, right? Because that Houston secondary has been much maligned, but since they've gotten some recent additions, they've done better. And J.J. Watt will likely come back. They could get some pressure on Allen, but some of those stray throws that Allen has that haven't been intercepted, that Bills fans have told us repeatedly he hasn't thrown interceptions on those plays, I think Houston could take advantage of it. But I don't think it's like a stone cold lock for the home team in that case.
I'm with you there. What about divisional or conference championship?
I really want to see New Orleans go into Green Bay, and then just like the silence you hear is Lambeau Field, is what as Vern Lundquist once said.
That game is really interesting because Green Bay would have secured home field, obviously.
No, they would be the 2 seed.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What I mean is they would have home field in this game, which means theoretically they're better than the Saints.
Yes. Yep.
And in reality,
technicality, really, right?
Right.
Yeah.
In reality, they certainly are not. But there's the mystique of Lambeau Field. There's also this Aaron Rodgers guy, which he may be the most polarizing quarterback in the NFL right now. And then you've got a Saints team who has just talked. All you hear about the Saints is how well they're amazing at home, but you get them on the road outside. Drew Brees, all of a sudden his arm shrivels up and he can't push the ball downfield, and all of these things, like they go from greatness to just terrible.
Yeah.
And so this would be a clashing of narratives that I think would be really interesting. And you've got matchups on both sides of the ball that would be really great, right? You've got Michael Thomas, maybe the best receiver over the past 4 years, going up against some young cornerbacks, Jair Alexander. Then you've got some edge rushers for Green Bay going against a couple of top 2 tackles. On the New Orleans side, how important it is for Drew Brees to be able to get rid of the ball quickly. So I think it'd be a fantastic matchup.
Yep, absolutely. And it's one of those where Green Bay would likely be favored and likely be a big public side, and then New Orleans, in our opinion, probably be the team that should have been favored even after laying a few points by being the road team. So,
what about your ideal conference championship on each side of the bracket would be?
I think New Orleans, San Francisco, a rematch of the 2011 divisional game, which was one of the best playoff games we've ever seen in the last decade, right? And then in the AFC side, I think it's got to be Baltimore, Kansas City. And no one wants to see the Patriots.
No one wants to see the Patriots.
And we want to see, because the other thing with Baltimore is all this public support has been for Baltimore. We just talked about it, right? But there's the last real team that Baltimore lost to was Kansas City in Week 3.
Yep.
And so, are they going to be able to avenge that loss? There's going to be a lot of cool storylines there. Like Kansas City would legitimately be legitimately be thought of as a threat there, we would actually basically that game. What would you make that game
In terms of what the spread
point
would be?
spread? Yeah.
I think it would be Ravens by 4.
Okay. That's what ELO would indicate, but then like the sort of other metrics, it just depends. Like it's such an interesting game because
That's why it's
Ravens
the optimal matchup.
The Ravens do things unconventionally enough where like their grades are weird, right? Because their quarterback runs and that, but running doesn't matter unless it's a quarterback, all that kind of stuff. So it would be an interesting matchup. I'd probably just make it -3 and roll that way.
All right. So in the Super Bowl, I think there are two options that people would really like to see. One is Baltimore, San Francisco, a rematch of a great game, and then the other is the one that I would prefer.
Are we going to petition Chris right now?
Yeah, which is Kansas City, San Francisco, which would, I think, be the ideal Super Bowl matchup because of the Andy Reid storyline, because of how great Pat Mahomes is, because of the fact that this year he's kind of been under the radar, but that team is just a transcendent offense. And then on the other side of things, you have a San Francisco team that has one of the most passionate fan bases. They'd all be out there. Yeah. And you've got a quarterback in Jimmy G who's nowhere near Pat Mahomes, but the environment that he plays in is good enough to elevate potentially, that offense to be a Super Bowl champion. I think that'd be the ideal Super Bowl matchup.
It'd be a great matchup between two great coaches. It'd be, Kyle Shanahan trying to get revenge from the time he lost when he was an Atlanta offensive coordinator. It'd be Andy Reid trying to, get his first Super Bowl ring and basically cement his place in, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Patrick Mahomes, obviously, Jimmy G, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, two defenses, right, trending in different directions, right? Kansas City, a dumpster fire early in the season, becoming one of the better defenses now. San Francisco, best in the NFL, and now kind of trending the wrong way. It would be a great matchup, and I think, and then there's also the history between the two franchises. There's, trading Joe Montana from San Francisco to Kansas City. Even Alex Smith, right, was like a trade, one of those where Kansas City, or San Francisco wanted Kaepernick instead, traded Alex Smith. Alex Smith has all this success for Kansas City. San Francisco goes in the tank after that. It's a pretty cool matchup, and it has a lot of storylines, and it'll be interesting to see which side Joe Montana takes.
Yeah, it will. All right, you ready to go to Week 17?
Yeah, let's are we gonna do the Sunday night game first?
I think we should do the Sunday night game first. We should spend a decent amount of time on Seahawks Niners because this is the first playoff game. It matters a ton, especially for the Niners, because if they win, they get home field. If they lose, they're going on the road.
Yep.
And the difference between that is massive, right? Their chance of winning the Super Bowl would go from about 30% with a win, which is which is huge, and then all of a sudden you drop down to below 10% with a loss. That's how drastic this game is and how much it matters. And I was surprised personally, and I'm still a little surprised that the Seahawks are more than a 3-point underdog. Are you?
No.
Does that really not surprise you at all?
No, because here's the thing about the 49ers. Their point differential, their yards per play, their EPA per play, all that kind of stuff, both offensively and defensively, are very good. And they've regressed some lately, but they're very good. Seattle, no. Seattle point differential, Seattle. This game reminds me of the game where we had Green Bay plus the 3 in San Francisco, and a lot of other people had San Francisco for reasons that now are apparent, which is San Francisco is a very efficient team. The other team is not. Over the course of time, the difference here, though, is that the quarterback for Seattle is legitimately good, whereas the quarterback for Green Bay at this point in time is living off of legacy. So I am somewhat surprised that it's moved out to 3.5 because that's really begging people to bet Seattle. I imagine the ticket count would be, they're going to report these kind of BS ticket and money counts for this game, and I think that the guy from BetOnline is going to tweet out, "We need Seattle tonight," But I would not bury Seattle. I would not say they're dead here. I think Russell Wilson's overcome a lot. San Francisco, We talked about their game against Atlanta. It came somewhat to fruition against LA. There are fundamental issues with San Francisco. They're still a great team, but they're not perfect. And I think some of those could rear their ugly head, on Sunday night.
Well, so I look at the offense first, and Russell Wilson is by far the better quarterback, about a 92 overall grade, Jimmy G, 76. So that tells you Russell Wilson has played dramatically better than Jimmy G. But San Francisco 49ers, expected points added per pass play, 0.14. Seattle, 0.03.
Right.
Which is a large difference between the two. Seattle's about league average, slightly above, and San Francisco's like top 6. I think they might actually be 6th. So what that tells you is, are you more confident in one singular player being great in this game? Or are you more confident in a scheme that has proven to be successful over the course of the season, remaining successful? Maybe in spite of a quarterback who has the chance of being worse. And that is a really interesting matchup. So I want to say that I think the advantage goes to San Francisco there because there's more stability in all of the players that are playing and all of those guys being healthy. Remember, Kittle was out in that Week 10 matchup.
Yep.
Emmanuel Sanders got hurt in that game early on. And then Kendrick Bourne needed a rebirth, and he wanted to forget that game because he all of a sudden went out there and forgot how to run routes. So I would not put any stock in that game, and I think that's the most interesting aspect of this one is, do you choose the singular greatness of Russell Wilson or the team greatness of San Francisco? The defenses, this is my question for you. How much do the defenses matter in this game?
Wow. Well, I think here's the thing. I think if Seattle has the cluster injuries that they had against the last few teams, then it matters, right? If Griffin, Quandre Diggs, Clowney, and Michael Kendricks, some subset of 3 or 4 of those players are all out, they're screwed defensively, and I think that matters. If all of their players are playing, I think that defense matters a lot less. I think it's basically about which quarterback plays better. Because we saw in the earlier matchup, Jimmy G, of course the injuries mattered, but we saw it against the Rams. Like, the inaccuracy is just sometimes going to bite them, and I don't know. So for me, I think it's more about the quarterbacks. The only thing that I would pull back on is if Seattle's missing half their starters, like they have been at times, then it's a problem.
I want to say that it matters a little bit, but I really just don't think it does, because Seattle's defense is bad regardless of who they have out there. And
right.
It's all about the Niners executing. It's all about Jimmy G executing. And if they do, they're going to put up points, regardless of how healthy Seattle is. On the other side of things, the Niners have a lot of talent, obviously. But it still comes down to whether the Seahawks, if Jamarco Jones is out there playing tackle, put me in, coach, right? I'll get my Niners jersey on real quick, get myself a couple of pressures, off the edge. It's just about whether those offenses can do the certain things that push them over to that level, right? So for San Francisco, it's Jimmy G being good Jimmy G. For Seattle, it's don't light the house on fire, everyone but Russell Wilson, right? Just manage to not completely poop yourself.
Yeah.
And if so, then they've got a legit shot. But I don't think the defenses matter a whole lot in this game. If one of those defenses ends up having, if San Francisco ends up having a dominant performance, it's because Seattle is incapable of rising to the level Russell needs.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said, and so it'll be interesting here because I am three and a half
nervous.
is too many.
As a person that wants the Niners obviously to win because I'm a fan, but feels terrible about knowing they're more than a field goal favorite on the road in Seattle against Russell Wilson. If I had to bet one side of this game, this is one of those games where I can see the Niners winning by 20, but if I had to take one side of 3.5, I would take the Seattle side and then just watch the game and know I'll be happy either way.
Yeah. We at times, so there's been times in this podcast where we've said that Seattle had value in the NFC West. Then there was times we said San Francisco had value in the NFC West. Hopefully you're carrying both of those and you end up with just a pure profit there. But for example, if you have some 49ers futures to win the NFC West, a Seattle bet is not the worst thing in the world.
Right. Well,
Because it has expected EV anyway.
I have some 49ers futures, I'll tell you that. So you would take, if you just didn't have any leverage, any other
I would take
way.
Seattle, but again, I don't think it's going to make. Well, it did not make our picks column, and it's not something that I'm gonna like as lock of the week.
Lock of the week material.
Yeah. It's not the teaser we had last week.
No, absolutely not. Here's one other angle that I love using the word angle.
Angles.
Makes me feel professional. This game means a ton for the Niners, but really doesn't mean as much for the Seahawks, because it's like the difference between playing at home against the Vikings or the road against the NFC East. Does that in any way play into this?
So Seattle doesn't have an opportunity to get a.
No, because they lost last week.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. I do think it matters though, because I think their home field advantage is significant, and I think they are not afraid of the Vikings.
I agree.
Like, there's a chance they could play Dallas, right? Like, I would rather play Minnesota at home than Dallas on the road. I understand Philadelphia, but Philadelphia is not a dumpster fire from a coaching perspective. They're just
as
struggle.
home underdogs, which they would probably be, is the last thing I'd want to do. I just think from a travel standpoint, you want to avoid traveling at all costs as much as possible in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I would throw that narrative out the window. All right. Next game. Next most important game seems to be Tennessee, Houston. And this one is very interesting to me because GM Bill O'Brien, ever heard of him?
Yeah.
GM Bill O'Brien is saying that the Houston Texans are going to try and win this game. They feel it is important. They're going to play their players. Head coach Bill O'Brien, I think this is the guy that makes the decisions on practices, said that Deshaun Watson would not have practiced with a back injury yesterday. So I don't know if he's having like an internal battle with himself, but there, to me at least, seems like a small chance that Houston, maybe it's a very small chance, but that Houston takes it easy even if they play Deshaun Watson, because head coach Bill O'Brien will actually be the one making decisions on Sunday. That being said, Houston is a 3.5-point underdog at home, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I say, with our power metrics, I would say that Tennessee is a slightly better team than Houston going right now. But then Houston is at home. Houston, so again, and we wrote about this in our article because, to give away the plot, Houston's the pick here, right? But the Houston has something to play for in this game, because if they win and Kansas City loses to the Chargers, the Chargers have like a positive point differential. They're not, or they did going into 2 weeks ago. They're not a terrible team. Would you, if you're Houston, wouldn't you rather play? So if you win this game and Kansas City loses, you get Duck Hodges and we're round one of the playoffs. That's motivation enough for me. If you lose, you get Buffalo, which is not an easy out, in my opinion. So, and then the other thing, which I think is not trivial, you played like horse bleep on Saturday against Tampa Bay. And this is what we're going to talk about for a few of these teams. Do you want to go into the playoffs having played two pretty bad games in a row? I don't think so.
No.
So
no, you don't.
So
there's no doubt about it. You want to play well before you go into the playoffs, because the mental health of your team is as important as the physical health.
So this is a game where I think this is all about the number. If this game was 3, Houston -3, we would take Tennessee in a heartbeat. Since this game is 3.5, and I got it at 6 at one point in the week. So if you think about trying to understand the market, right? Opens 4.5, gets out to 6. Bill O'Brien says what he's about to say. People start to wise up. It gets down to 3.5. So you're moving in the right direction of the market. You're not getting the best of the number, but at least there's some support on your side, which I think is meaningful.
You're still getting 3.
You're getting a full 3.5.
No, I mean, you're still getting the number 3.
Right.
So, I get the whole movement thing, but the number
it's not going through 3.
The number that I care most about if I'm betting this side of things is that a Houston victory by 3 points, a Houston loss by 3 points still gets me a win, and that's still intact, and I don't see it moving past that personally. So I really like this. There's also the J.J. Watt thing. I don't know if he can run deep routes like Will Fuller, but I'd at least give it a try. Give it a shot there. It's crazy to me how much Will Fuller seems to matter to this team. They can't just find another fast guy to sprint down the middle of the field. I think Will Fuller's good, but just get a guy from the track team at Texas.
Well, what I think they need to do is I think they need to use Kenny Stills in that role and have Kiki Kuti play some sort of underneath role that Kenny Stills was playing, because I think Stills is perfectly capable of playing that down the field role.
That's a good call.
And Kuti is a player who has talent, who seems to be in Bill O'Brien's doghouse.
Which one, head coach or GM Bill O'Brien?
Here's the thing about
which one do you think his family likes more?
Yeah. Here's the thing that we liked about New Orleans last week that I think it will carry this week. And you pointed it out, which I give you a lot of credit for, because I was not paying attention to this. Tennessee can't get pressure.
They can't.
They just can't freaking get pressure.
Cannot.
And Watson was pressured 8 times 2 weeks ago in the game that they won in Tennessee, which should not have been as close as it was. Last week, Drew Brees was pressured 6 times the entire game. And that puts a lot of strain on a secondary that's starting players like LaShawn Sims and Logan Ryan, who, once he's gotten out of the cocoon, the nest that is New England, that he has not been the type of player that I think they want him to be. So this is probably a game, I'm a little worried about Hopkins being sick, Kenny Stills being limited, obviously Fuller being doubtful. Tunzel, I think, will play this week. He was limited in practice. So I'm a little worried about those things adding up, but there's something to play for here for Houston.
It's legit.
And the thing is Tennessee is not to be like people. If I'm looking at this AFC playoff picture, I do not want Tennessee in the playoffs because they do some things that stretch.
That's what it's all about. You either have to beat them now or you've got to beat them later.
And we see this all the time.
They do some things to stretch you out.
They're a yoga instructor. And then here's the other thing, and we've seen this before.
Namaste.
This narrative is BS usually, right? I mean, if the team says they're going to play, they're going to play. They're going to play. We saw it with Minnesota against Chicago last year. Chicago had nothing to play for.
If you can't find a way to play hard when you have the potential to either face Duck Hodges in the playoffs or a real NFL team,
but look, like last year we had Minnesota was 7-point favorites at home against Chicago. Yep. Chicago said the entire week, we're playing our players, the ones that are healthy. Chicago had a chance to say, okay, we could lay down and then play Minnesota literally the next week in our home stadium, and they went out on the road and murked Minnesota. And like, those are the types of things, like, players play, right? And here's the thing about Tennessee. What is the thing we know about Tennessee? They're the most enigmatic team in the entire league, right? The second you think they're good, yes, they lose bad. 2 in a row. So this is, I think, a good one. We also want the Tennessee Titans to lose because the season win total, we would like to push 8. But that had no bearing on our analysis prior to this. In fact, we would have some, I think, if they were underdogs, we'd have some like incentive to bet them. Sure. Right? But no, this is just about the number. All right, let's go to, I want to talk about the 2 NFC East games. But before we do that, I don't like bowl games. But there's one pseudo bowl game that I'm willing to watch this week, and that's Cleveland-Cincinnati. This game is so bad that it deserves to be a bowl game, and I have actually pondered what I think the name of this bowl should be. I think it should be like Skyline Chili Bowl. Yeah. So I eventually settled on the Skyline Chili Pooper Bowl. No, the Blowout Bowl. Well, either one. The alliteration, so good. Right. Either way, it says the same thing. You're going to need a porta potty in fast order. Presented by Blockbuster. Are there any Blockbusters? I don't think so. Yeah, just like these 2 teams should not exist anymore on the NFL slate because they're so bad. But Cleveland is a 2.5-point favorite in Cincinnati. And what I keep hearing is, well, now that Cincinnati's locked up the number 1 pick, they're going to win a game. They're going to try to win. Wait, what? They tried to win against the Dolphins. Did you watch the Dolphins game? They needed a miracle to not lose by 8 points against the Dolphins, who suck. And now they're going to come in and beat a Cleveland team. If you think Cleveland isn't motivated to win this game, you need to reorder your mental You need to reorder your Coney at Skyline Chili. Because if Cleveland loses to Cincinnati to close out the season, they can't even go back to Cleveland. I mean, their lockers are not there when they get back. And I always come back to, at some point, everything that Cincinnati does or everything that Cleveland does ends up working out against them. And so this is how winning this game decisively can end up hurting them. Freddie Kitchens should be gone after this season. Mm-hmm.
poor guy put in a bad spot, but he just has no idea what he's doing. And the only way that he stays is if they blow out Cincinnati.
They get back to 7 wins.
They look so good in this game that everyone's like, we got to give them one more shot.
Okay, here's something as well that I think is not trivial too. Chubb. Nick Chubb is 47 yards away from 1,500 yards. He's also in the hunt, Kareem Hunt, for the rushing yard title.
He's like, he just has to not
exactly
have a blowout in this game, and he wins it.
Odell Beckham Jr.
How does the rushing champion not lead their team to the playoffs? He's also the highest graded running back.
Yeah,
so it's not a fluke. The guy's awesome, and it just doesn't matter because the rest of the team sucks.
Odell Beckham Jr. is 46 yards away from a 1,000-yard season, which matters to him.
Yep.
The Mayfield,
Well, let me tell you the motivation for Mayfield.
Yeah.
Mayfield's on 6 commercials every Sunday, and if this guy gets rocked by the worst team in the NFL, that is a bad look.
Yeah. So it's actually now 3, but we printed out -2.5. I imagine 3 is -100 or something like that, right? Or plus 100. Sorry. But it was a game we printed out along with Houston in our spread picks column. Go to pff.com.
And then can I say one last thing about this, which is it's in Cincinnati. It's a couple blocks from my apartment.
Yeah.
And I have yet to see Cincinnati fans actually walking towards that stadium. No one is going to those games. There's going to be more Browns fans there than Cincinnati Bengals fans. I mean, like, the home field part of this is just a joke. I want a jersey count. I want to know how many more Mayfield and Burrow jerseys there are than Dalton jerseys. Because there's no sentimental value for Andy Dalton.
Do you know we talk about Uber drivers on this show a lot, and my favorite Uber drivers are the ones that refer to them as Burrows.
There's another guy that's like that who I always put an S on. Oh, Chase Daniel. Chase Daniels. Yeah, Burrows. By the way, you said so the Chubb they're chanting of Chubb. The story behind that is that we were watching the Browns game a couple weeks back, and we just happened to have the sound on, and Beth Mowins is calling the game. God bless her. And I don't remember the exact context, but we happen to turn the sound on right at the moment that she's going, Chubb, Chubb, Chubb.
Come on.
Yes, that's where the joke comes from. And everyone just started dying laughing because it's poor Beth Mowins over here is trying to get through this awful Browns game.
Oh, my goodness.
And we catch her at the wrong moment.
I think the Browns are the side here. It's tough, but I think fundamentally speaking, like, this is, again, another, we got jobbed by them when they were short road favorites against Arizona. But what does Arizona have? Arizona has Kyler Murray and a good coach. Our Cincinnati Bengals have Andy Dalton and Zach Taylor, who, with all due respect to both of those men, are not somebody I'm scared of.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, let's really quickly talk about the 2 NFC East games because I think people care about them. The Eagles are favorites on the road in New York. Mm-hmm. Dallas are huge favorites at home against the Redskins. There's a reason that Dallas still has a 27% chance to make the playoffs, and that is that the Eagles are not very good.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys, it would be hard for them to lose this game, right? Like, they are fundamentally, you talk about fundamentals with respect to the Browns, which is hilarious, by the way. Dallas, their fundamentals were not on display against Philly, but they're at home against Washington. You'd figure, like, AC joint, you could just throw it out and just run the ball and beat this team. So the interesting thing to me is if you have Dallas to win the division, how what's the best way to hedge this? Because there is obviously opportunity. Are you just taking Philly money line?
Yeah, the problem is you have this. You're going to lose money if you do that, right? Because your issue is, it depends upon where you are, 210, 220 or whatever. You're laying that with Philadelphia, and you were at points in time getting -150 with Dallas, -200 to win the NFC East. So it's mostly just I need to recoup some losses here. But if you do that, you're going to really kick yourself if Philly loses and Dallas goes ahead and wins that game. We would make the money line price more like -207 in this game, so it's not a positive EV play. it might just be one of those where you just kind of, you eat the loss there, or hope that the Giants come to play, which honestly, I think that the Giants have a better than puncher's chance of winning this game.
I do too. I really do. The Giants are playing for the momentum going into next season, which is the greatest thing on the planet to think that matters. But they are playing with both that, and I think they like Pat Shurmur. And so they're kind of playing for Pat Shurmur's job, I think, to a certain extent, where it's like, hey, if we just finish strong.
And Pat Shurmur's a good coach.
He is a good coach. So I think there's a lot of ways that the Giants can win this game against Philly. I am surprised that we don't really like the Giants.
If anything, we would like Philadelphia here, but I think a lot of that has to do with Danny Dimes.
Yes.
His grade being different than some of the production we've seen, and that can certainly happen. I think, to me, there are two outcomes in this game. The one outcome is that Daniel Jones plays every bit as well as he played against Washington last week, and this is a shootout, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And if that's the case, right, like let's say New York gets up a couple touchdowns, then by all means hedge your bets on Philadelphia in game, right? Because then you're going to get a positive EV situation on those, right? Or you're going to get a game where Jones just fumbles the football, throws interceptions, all that kind of stuff, and you're out, right? I kind of lean towards the former because, they put Ronald Darby on IR this week. Rasul Douglas was playing. Jalen Mills is playing for Philadelphia right now. The linebackers for the Eagles are not particularly good. Like Saquon Barkley is looking like he's hitting his stride in the passing game as well as the run game. I don't know.
This would be the cherry on top for your Eagles are the Falcons take.
Yes. This
the
would be
Falcons
very Falcons
would lose this game every single time. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. Like, they would certainly lose this game. Alrighty. Let's move on. There are a couple other games that kind of matter. Let's go Pittsburgh, Baltimore. RG3, Duck Hodges. Who's the better quarterback in this game?
We're going to get called wishy-washy or turncoats, but yeah, it's RG3.
I don't know if I can go that far. Here's the thing that's interesting about this game to me. So say RG3 is the better quarterback. Fine. The Ravens are certainly the better team. They're resting a bunch of their players, whatever. But even though they're playing RG3, they don't want him to get injured because then in the playoffs, they're, a nick up away from having like a total catastrophe out there because if they can't put RG3 in to back up Lamar, like who do they have, right? They're putting Mark Ingram running the Wildcat. So I actually think they kind of keep it a little safe with RG3, and that would worry me because that means RG3 is throwing the ball.
Yeah.
Which can't be good for anyone.
Yeah, but at the same right, and we consider this because even with RG3 out, our numbers still like the Ravens here. And if Lamar was in, it'd be even worse, right? So, but the issue is that Duck Hodges has been able to at times throw YOLO passes to receivers who can make plays. And I'm afraid without, Earl in, probably Marcus Peters, without some of those players in the game, he can get maybe 2 plays. And I think the first team to 14 points in this game wins. So I would hate to be in a position where RG3 and the Ravens have to come back from 14 down in this situation, right?
Yes.
There's obviously other situations where, Duck throws a pick six and the Ravens win this game 10-3 and everybody's happy. But that's the concern I have.
Well, that's one of the reasons so this total's at 37 and I like over 37 because the Ravens defense, I think, takes advantage of Duck Hodges here. And the Steelers then have to put, they put Mason Rudolph in or, put, who is the third guy?
No, Paxton Lynch.
Paxton Lynch, that's right. They put Paxton Lynch in there. Also, Marquise Pouncey's out, which is a benefit to the Steelers because he's not very good.
He's an all-decade team member, George. Put some respect on that guy's name.
Right. So I kind of like the over there, too.
Okay.
Throw it out there. But I'm not sure I'm not sure I feel confident enough in RG3 to like him more than Deshaun Watson in a game that he needs to win. All right, next game that actually kind of matters. Is that Green Bay, Detroit?
Yeah, let's do Green Bay, Detroit briefly. I like Detroit in this game. I liked Detroit last week against Denver, so what do I know about them? But I like Detroit.
Yeah, I do too. It's just a matter of, like, how willing are you to invest in David Blow, whatever the hell his name is.
Yeah, I mean that's really
he's not been very good.
No,
17 passer rating under pressure is very bad. But the good news is that
Kenny Golladay is
that
good.
generally regresses.
Yeah,
to the
and
mean.
Kenny Golladay was making plays. He continues to make plays for that team. Kerryon Johnson played for that team last week, or I believe so. But anyway, they had actually some success last week, and this is a double-digit spread. I don't think Green Bay is good enough to beat teams by double digits repeatedly.
Yeah,
especially on the road.
I mean, they're now facing a much better quarterback than they did last week.
Stop.
Yeah, I like the Lions getting 12.5 as well. In a like week where there's just not a lot out there. Yeah. I could get on board with it.
How tilted would Vikings fans be if the Lions won this game outright?
Pretty tilted. I would say on a scale of 1 to extremely tilted, they'd be extremely tilted.
Yeah.
Okay, Kansas City, LAC, the Clippers, the worst Clippers team. Total 44.5. Spread now down to 8. I think this was 9.5 earlier,
yeah.
And we were both like, "Hey, Chiefs are just going to steam them." But I don't really feel that way anymore. And I think if I had to pick one side of this game, like I might just have to go with the over.
Yeah, I think over. The thing is the Kansas City Chiefs just absolutely own the AFC West, and like it's like to an absolutely preposterous degree. So I would stay away from this game, even the over, just because this total is 7 points worse than it was when we bet them in Mexico, and I still think after watching that game, it's tough for me because the Chargers are slow and inefficient.
Yep.
Slow and inefficient doesn't make for good good totals.
I couldn't agree more. However, the Chiefs' march to Miami begins here, so
That's right.
keep that in mind. Carolina at home against New Orleans. Will Grier Part 2. The Panthers are 13-point underdogs. The Saints need to win this game because it will keep them playing at home, and that's what they want to do, obviously. So are they just going to go out and blow out the Panthers? To me, this is all about whether Will Grier is actually as terrible as he was. His 0 big-time throws, 8% of his throws or plays were turnover-worthy, which is really, really unfortunate.
He threw the ball. Like, I single-handedly lost a fantasy championship because he just threw the ball to McCaffrey. Like, that was the only guy on the team that he was willing to throw the ball to.
I mean, not even, like, yeah.
It was unbelievable. I mean, it's just, ugh. Well, here's the thing that I'm going to be really upset with. If this game gets out to 14, I think there'll be some value on Carolina, which, ugh. Yeah.
I'm not here for that.
Blow.
Yeah, I can get away from that. Any other meaningful games? I don't think there really are, right?
Well, New England, Miami. New England, I believe, has to win to keep Kansas City from the 2 seed.
True. They are 16-point favorites at home against Miami. Do you have any... I mean, it seems pretty darn efficient.
Yeah, I mean, here's the question. So the total here, so we talked about teasers last week. Total here, 44.5.
Yeah.
If you tease Miami out to 22, would that be a good leg?
It's hard to imagine the Patriots even scoring more than 22 points.
Right? Thank you.
So, yes. However, from a lock of the week standpoint, I think you're going to have to convince me against Houston plus 3.5.
Okay.
Would you like to try and do that?
Yes. So the only issue is that we could be in a position Friday or Saturday where all these guys are out. And that's a sinking feeling.
It is. I think if that happens, though, we could pivot.
As in change our lock of the week?
So what we do is we say, okay, look, our lock of the week is going to be Houston plus 3.5. But we're going to wait to place this bet until Friday.
I see.
And if not, then if all those guys get ruled out, then we're going to go with whatever number 2 is.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Okay. What would number 2 be? Cleveland?
I don't know.
See, so here's a couple games that don't have any meaning that I kind of like.
You want to put in there. Okay.
Buffalo -2 against the Jets. Now that number was 1, now it's 2. And -1.5, 115 if you look otherwise. Minnesota -1 against Chicago. Those 2 games to me, if I'm thinking about like how this looks motivation-wise, both of the teams are assured a playoff spot. They're at home. It's their last home game of the season in all likelihood. And in fact, in Minnesota's case, yes. Neither team wants to go into the playoffs with 2 consecutive losses. Neither team wants to go into the playoffs with consecutive losses, both of which against division rivals, right?
True.
I think both teams, and especially in the case of the Vikings, I think are pretty solid picks.
Okay. Wow. I almost can't.
For me to like the Vikings, that there has to be a reason for it.
There is really something special there.
Yes.
That's for sure. I would say of those 2, the Vikings are the more compelling side. Because just because of the way the Bears have played all season. And it's like what hope do the Bears have of actually winning this game? I can't imagine that.
And there's no spoiler. There's no spoiler for them either, right? Like they're not like knocking the Vikings out of the playoffs. Ha ha, There's also legitimately like nothing the Bears do well anymore.
Offensively, they've not done anything well all season, and in order to beat the Vikings, you're going to have to at home. You're going to have to score more than 20 points, as the Green Bay Packers did. The New York Jets, I want to get away from like the potential of this Sam Darnold end of season
having a good solid,
and so I think if I had to take one of those as the second option, I'd go with the Vikings.
Okay, so let's preliminarily look. Okay, so let's say it's Houston, and for the purposes of grading this on the picks column, it's plus 3.5. But for the sake of the lock week, let's see where the number is, good or bad. Let's say Sunday morning, and let's grade on that.
Okay.
So Houston is our pick, but again, we're going to wait on the number.
If Houston's playing everybody, we're going with Houston, and hopefully they can help us donate some money.
But we will go by what the number is Sunday then.
Yeah.
Even if it's like plus 2.5, we get screwed. But yes. No.
All right. I don't think there's any reason to discuss any of these other games, right? Do you want to run through them quickly?
Well, no. I mean, there's no. Let's not even like.
If you have to, let's just run through them. If you have to pick them, I'm in a pick 'em league where I'm like a few games out of first place, like 300 people.
Okay.
So I need your help.
Tampa Bay against Atlanta.
Tampa Bay is a 1.5 point favorite. I think you've got to take.
Do it.
Jameis Winston.
Yes, because Jameis is not as bad as Falcons. Okay. We already talked about Dallas. That line's pretty efficient. Denver -3 against Oakland. This game actually does matter because Oakland has like a very small chance to make the playoffs.
They have a minute chance. And
Denver.
And right. And so for that reason, like, I feel like Denver's the right side because there's no way the Raiders play well enough to win a game that matters.
Okay. Indianapolis against
no Josh Jacobs.
Indianapolis versus Jacksonville.
Jacksonville is a 4-point underdog at home. I'm pretty torn on this one. I think the model would lean a little bit towards Jacksonville, but
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, Jacksonville getting 4 points at home.
Yeah, I don't think the Colts have the goods anymore, to be quite honest with you. I think Jacksonville probably covers this, although I'm not sure. Here's one that's interesting, and I guess we haven't even considered putting Blake Bortles in yet. So, because I got Arizona at plus 7.5 early in the week.
Yeah, if it's Hundley Bortles.
If it's Hundley Bortles, but right now it looks like the line is 4.5. What do you think? I'm going to put Bortles in the model.
If it's 4.5, then I would take the Bortles-led Rams.
Okay.
Brett Hundley does not.
Yes, right. Engender a pick there.
Yeah, especially because the Rams, Goff has not played great all year. I don't love Blake Bortles, but
Yeah. Plus the defense for the the Cardinals is an absolute travesty.
the difference between Goff and Bortles is smaller than the difference between Kyler Murray and Brett Hundley.
As good as Brett Hundley played, it was more a product of Seattle literally, in many
having
cases,
no one out there playing defense.
Well, also just being unprepared for literally anything that gets thrown at them.
True. No, I'm with you there. All right. Those are the games. I don't think there's anything else to discuss. And I don't really have a Cincy Y story for you.
Well,
unfortunately.
because it was Christmas time.
Have you managed to make it to the Minnesota Y?
No,
No.
I did. I took a. Well, it's cold there. I didn't realize how
is.
cold it is there anymore. But I figured Cincinnati being in the Midwest was like almost as cold, but it's not. It's legitimately worse there. So I took like a walk one day and I froze my ass off, and I was like, okay, no more of this.
You're done. My Cincy Y story is that I tried to go on Christmas Eve, and apparently they closed early, and I was pissed. How can you close a gym early? Anyways, everything closes in Cincinnati during Christmas, apparently.
Well, that was the thing. When I flew home, so that's like maybe a good. So I'm like, one of the things I like doing at airports is getting a cup of coffee, especially like a Caribou coffee from Minnesota. So I'm driving home from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Nothing's open on the ride home. I got a headache because I have caffeine withdrawal. I get to the airport. Only Chinese places are open at the airport, which I get because like the whole like Jews eat Chinese food on Christmas thing.
Yep.
But like literally no coffee shops are open at the airport, and I was there like 2 hours early. I had work to do, and I'm like,
Really
this is the
coffee.
woat. Yeah.
I told you not to go that early because I don't think that many people are traveling Christmas night. You know, listen to me.
There were big lines, but then there were not. Yeah, it was just a travesty. Anyway.
Anywho, the playoffs start next week. We'll be here for you early Monday morning. Talk about all the playoff matchups and look at lines for those. In the meantime, you can head to pff.com and read all of the wonderful things that are written up there. Some good stuff this week. And thanks, guys. Peace out.